The richest club in Italian football by revenue is AC Milan, by profitability it's Napoli, and by valuation it's Juventus. In terms of owner wealth though, it is the less illustrious and world-famous Como 1907, who just finished 10th in their first season back in Serie A in over 20 years. Managed by Spanish legend Cesc Fabregas, the former Arsenal captain is also a co-owner at Como, alongside fellow Euros, World Cup, Premier League, and La Liga title-winning great Thierry Henry. Fabregas and Henry are both minority investors in Como, brought on board primarily due to their contacts, experience and expertise, as Como's majority investors, Budi and Bambang Hartono, don't need much help when it comes to cash. The Indonesian brothers own and control the Djarum Group, which is the largest conglomerate in Indonesia, making them the 90th and 94th richest people in the world, each with an estimated net worth in excess of $20 billion. Their combined net worth, of well over $40 billion, is greater than the Red Bull Airmark Mitschitz, any Italian, and indeed, the owners of any other Serie A club. Juventus, Inter Milan and AC Milan have the second, third and fourth richest owners in Italian football, but since 2019, Como have had the richest. In a Premier League context, Como's owners are richer than Tottenham, Liverpool and Manchester United's co-owners combined. On the day of recording this video alone, Budi and Bambang's estimated net worth rose by an estimated $663 million. That 24-hour increase alone is greater than the total fortunes of 9 Serie A club owners, including this season's title winners Napoli. When the Hartono brothers arrived at Como, a resort location which is renowned for attracting the world's rich and famous, the club was seeking promotion from Serie D, the semi-professional fourth tier of Italian football. Como didn't have a training ground, their beautiful old stadium was crumbling, and they hadn't tasted top-flight football since being declared bankrupt and forcibly refounded in the fourth tier in 2005. 12 years later, Como were declared bankrupt and banished to Serie D again. Now they are one of Europe's most upwardly mobile and ambitious clubs. They just finished above Torino and Udinese in their first season back in the top flight, 6 years on from playing semi-professional football, and now they have the Milan Giants, Juventus, Napoli, and Atalanta all firmly in their sights. Manager and co-owner Cesc Fabregas reportedly rejected advances from both Bayer Leverkusen and Inter Milan in recent months, with a rapidly growing reputation as a manager within the game, and it seems likely that he is going to be backed by one of the biggest war chests in Italian football this summer. Despite denying that their multi-billionaire owners would turn Como into especially high spenders, only Roma had a higher net spend than them last season in Serie A, and only just, ahead of the likes of Juve, AC Milan and Napoli, and already this summer, Como have unveiled 3 new signings who cost them a further €30 million. In the January transfer window, Como reportedly had a €40 million bid for Theo Hernandez rejected by AC Milan, who only finished 2 places above them in the Serie A table. So who are Como 1907? Why did Indonesia's largest conglomerate buy a struggling lower league Italian football team? And should Italy's, and indeed Europe's elite, be looking over their shoulders with serious concern? Well, funnily enough, and it is mad how this keeps on happening, that's what today's video is all about. So sit back, relax, and join me on a journey to Lake Como. I know, I'm really spoiling you this time. I've either cheated or I'm about to propose, as we take a look at a football club with enormous ambition, very deep pockets, and a project which is rife with contradiction, confusion, and just general strangeness. The largest commune on the famous lake of the same name, the city of Como serves as a gateway to Lake Como and the surrounding area. Mentioned by the Roman poet Catullus over 2,000 years ago, Como has a population of about 85,000 people, which is roughly the same as Grimsby in Lincolnshire, but it attracts significantly more visitors. Not so much a playground for the rich and famous as a luxury retreat and resort, the city has become synonymous with Hollywood A-listers like George Clooney and Sylvester Stallone, as well as billionaires like Richard Branson and Arkady Novikov. It's even a popular destination among footballers. Wayne Rooney, Ronaldinho and Lionel Messi have all holidayed in Como, as did Cesc Fabregas, before becoming a player, co-owner and manager of the local club, in that order. Chris Smalling got married there in 2017, meanwhile Ollie Watkins and Morgan Gibbs-White both chose it as the picturesque backdrop to propose to their partners. Como can count Taylor Swift, Brad Pitt, Mick Jagger, Madonna, and even Thogden among its recent visitors. Gianni Versace had a villa here, and Bond's Casino Royale was filmed here. Como isn't your typical destination, frequented by the rich and famous though. Unlike Saint-Tropez, St. Barths or Mykonos, the weather in Como is temperamental, the skies are often a dark shade of grey, and the city receives over twice as much annual rainfall as London. The primary attractions are the stunning mountain scenery, fantastic restaurants, and the knowledge that there will be no tourists without an offshore bank account within a 50-kilometre radius of you. Como attracts so many tourists for a city of 85,000 people, an estimated 1.5 million annually to the city, and almost 5 million to the province, that they are considering imposing a tourist tax to try and deter the less affluent among them. Seaplanes transporting Como's wealthy guests get a good look inside the Stadio Giuseppe Sinigaglia, Como 1907's home since 1928, which was built on the orders of Italy's fascist dictator Benito Mussolini. 17 years later, Mussolini was captured by communist partisans in the nearby village of Dongo before being shot, spat at, and hung upside down from the roof of a service station in Milan. Good times. The Stadio Giuseppe Sinigaglia sits on the shores of Lake Como, next door to the city's yacht and aero clubs, the latter of which is the oldest seaplane flying school in the world. Seaplanes take off and land behind the stadium's Curva Como, home of the club's ultras, and are visible during games. Despite occupying such a scenic location, that is the closest that most visitors to Como typically came to the Stadio Giuseppe Sinigaglia or to watching a game. Even Cesc Fabregas admits to knowing little about Como's football scene as a tourist to the area, before becoming directly involved with the club. Fabregas and Henry were approached to invest in Como by Darren Dean, son of David Dean, the former Arsenal co-owner and vice-chairman who played a key role in the Premier League's breakaway from the Football League in 1992. Darren Dean is a football agent and intermediary, whose clients include both Fabregas and Henry. When Fabregas was looking for a way out of Monaco 3 years ago, it was Dean who put then Como president Dennis Wise in touch with his World Cup winning clients. Fabregas only played 17 games for Como as they finished 13th in Serie B before retiring, but he has since become an integral part of the club's project off the pitch. Though Como were in the semi-professional Serie D when the billionaire Hartono brothers and their Jarum Group arrived, they are not a club totally lacking in pedigree. Founded, as their name would suggest, in 1907, Como competed in the Prima Categoria, which was the precursor to Serie D, for the first time in the 1913-14 season, which was earlier than the likes of Roma, Lazio and Napoli. Como were relegated in 1922, but they had 5 further stints in the top-flight Serie A between 1949 and 2003, spanning 13 seasons in total. Unlucky for some, Como certainly found their fortune to be out following their 2003 relegation. In a season characterised by dreadful results on the pitch and frequent violent scenes in the stands, leading to a ban on the club playing games at the Giuseppe Sinigaglia, Como finished 17th in Serie A. A second successive relegation followed in 2004, as Como finished bottom of Serie B, leading to financial difficulties which saw the club declared bankrupt, liquidated, and forced to reform in Serie D in 2005. It took 10 years for Como to return to Serie B in 2015, but just 2 years after that for the club to be declared bankrupt, liquidated, and relegated to Serie D all over again. The club's assets were purchased at auction by Acacia Essien in 2017, the wife of former Ghana and Chelsea midfielder Michael Essien. The €237,000 acquisition made Acacia the first female businesswoman to own an Italian club, and it came just 3 days after her husband had joined Indonesian club Persib Bandung. Mrs. Essien owned Como for nearly 2 years before the Indonesian conglomerate the Jarum Group, led by the Hartono brothers, purchased the club, with Como securing promotion to Serie C in the same season that the deal was completed. The Jarum Group paid €850,000 to acquire Como, plus a further €150,000 commitment to clear the club's debt. Como's club president, Mirwan Suwarso, is sometimes described as having been the brainchild behind the Hartono brothers investing in the club. Suwarso had no previous experience running a football club, having spent 2 years as an account director for Saatchi & Saatchi after leaving university, where he studied consumer science and retail management at Purdue in the United States. Before joining Como, Suwarso spent over 10 years working in Indonesia's entertainment industry, both as a producer on films and commercials, but most notably as the business development director at Super Soccer TV, a football television channel in Indonesia. He was poached by Mola, an Indonesian streaming service launched in 2019, which holds the Indonesian rights to the likes of UFC, Premiership Rugby, and several European and South American football leagues either in Indonesia, Italy, or multiple countries across the globe. Mola is a subsidiary of Polytron, which is itself a subsidiary of Djarum, which is, of course, owned by the Hartono brothers. Suwarso has been Como's president since Jarum acquired the club in 2019, and Mola's CEO since 2022, though he describes his job titles as being Chief Delusion Officer at Mola and Chief Cheerleader of Como on LinkedIn, because that's just the kind of wacky Indonesian David Brent that this dude is. Suwarso has previously written about how the problem for streaming services is a lack of customer loyalty and a high degree of churn, something which he feels can be rectified through the rights to sports, which tend to have stickier audiences than other forms of entertainment. Suwarso is very much the ideas, commerce, and business operations man at Como, with little involvement in sporting matters. And that is probably a good thing, seeing as though he has recently compared Djarum's project at Como to Disney, comparing the football club to Disneyland within that analogy, describing it as being, quote, our theme park division and not the most important part of the business, and stating, ahead of the planned renovation of Como Stadium, that, quote, football has to be secondary. But more on that in a moment. The Hartono brothers are even less heavily involved in Como's football operations. Suwarso says that he speaks to the owners on a weekly, if not daily basis, though one suspects that the company's streaming service Mola may often be the subject of their discussions, and he has also admitted that neither of them are football fans. That is slightly unusual in Indonesia, one of the most passionate and football-obsessed countries in the world, where club loyalties and allegiances have often bled over into hooliganism and violence, with the country's Liga 1, which was previously sponsored by Djarum, often described as being the deadliest and most violent league in world football. Aged 84 and 85, the Hartono brothers might not be personally invested in football, but they certainly are financially at this stage. Before buying Como, Djarum launched their own soccer school development program and academy team called Garuda Select, which takes some of the most talented young players from Indonesia, brings them over to the United Kingdom, and puts them up against English academies and development teams. Based at Loughborough University in Leicestershire, Garuda Select have faced the likes of Arsenal, Man City, and even Inter Milan on a tour of Italy. Garuda Select are managed by Des Walker, who played in both the Premier League and Serie A and won 59 caps for England, and their technical director is fellow former England international and Chelsea legend Dennis Wise. Youth development is a serious problem in Indonesia, owing to mismanagement and corruption, which is one of the reasons why, despite being the biggest country in the world in which football is the most popular sport, the national team is currently ranked 123rd in the world, below Estonia, Togo, and Azerbaijan, and they have never qualified for a World Cup as an independent nation. They did so once in 1938 as the Dutch East Indies, a colony of the Netherlands, where they lost their only game 6-0 against Hungary. Garuda Select's aim, ostensibly, is to try and rectify that, and they have so far had some success. Only founded in January 2019, several former Garuda Select players have played in Indonesia's top flight. Meanwhile, the academy's brightest likes, like Brave Fatari, Hoki Karaka, and Anando Ari, are all full Indonesian internationals now, all aged between 20 and 23. There is a secondary aim, however, which is where Suwarso comes in, and that is content. Garuda Select's journey is charted both on YouTube, where the team has over 60,000 subscribers, and videos with up to 46 million views, and, more notably, on Mola TV, where they are the subject of a 6-season docuseries titled Dream Chasers following their progress, of the kind that have become so common in recent years. I watched a couple of them in the name of research for this video, and I can confirm that it is mostly just Dennis Wise bollocking a bunch of very confused looking Indonesian kids. 10 out of 10, would recommend. There's also a movie about them called Garuda Select the Movie. Good name, but I must concede, I haven't watched that. That isn't the only football movie, documentary or docuseries that Mola TV's in-house studio, Mola Studios, has produced. There are 2 more series of Dream Chasers, following the Borussia Dortmund and Inter Milan academies. There is one about the history of Inter Milan, called Inter 110, one about the life and times of Sampdoria legend Fabio Quagliarella, which I really need to get around to watching, and one about Joey Barton's time at Fleetwood Town titled The Contract, a 6-part behind-the-scenes documentary which charted Barton's quest for redemption with the League One club between 2018 and 2021. I don't want to give away too many spoilers, but it doesn't end with him winning the Champions League. It also won't surprise you to know that there is not 1, not 2, but 3 docuseries charting the progress of Como on Mola TV. There are 2 series of Como 1907, which covers the club's takeover and promotions. There is CES, Como 1907, which is a, quote, captivating documentary which follows the remarkable journey of football legend Cesc Fabregas as he transitions from player to coach at Como, and, who could forget, Como Waves, Revolution on the Lake, which is described as being a, quote, gripping docuseries which follows the ambitious and groundbreaking story of Como 1907's women's team as they aim to become the first and only team in Italy to climb from the amateur 5th division to Serie A, mirroring the men's remarkable success. End quote. There is also an entire movie, of course there is, called Como 1907, The Real Story. Presumably, all of the documentaries were the fake story. What a waste of 18 hours of my life then. Still, if I hadn't have been watching that, I suppose I would only have been watching Dean Saunders Soccer SOS with my new Mola TV subscription, a series in which, quote, football legend Dean Saunders travels across the world to find Sunday League teams that could do with some experienced help to turn their fortunes around. From fat man leagues to prison teams, Dean spends a week with them to help get the best out of them. End quote. I'm not sure that I've ever heard an idea for a television series that sounded more like Alan Partridge speaking into his dictaphone. I don't know how successful that series was, but the Instagram account dedicated to it only has 5 followers, and 2 of them are a man called Dean Wheatley. So really, that's 4 followers, isn't it? And one of those is a boxing gym, and another one was a Como Mola and Jarum employee. So, well, that's 2 actual people who weren't employees. That one didn't get a second series.
We haven't met, but I liked your chat show.
Thank you very much.
Has he given you another series?
No, he won't give me one.
Give him another series, you swine.
Yeah, give me another series, you shit.
Presumably Monkey Tennis is already in production. Mola Studios sits within the umbrella of another Djarum subsidiary, named Cent Entertainment, which is headquartered in London and has an office in Como, and it is clear that Suwarso, and by extension the Hartono brothers, view all of these businesses as being highly integrated. Suwarso has even openly admitted that, initially at least, the primary reason why Djarum bought Como was to produce a television show. Speaking to Calcio e Finanza earlier this year, when asked why Djarum bought Como, Suwarso responded, quote, "We were looking for a project for a television programme. At the time, I was managing a TV station in Indonesia, and we wanted to create a show that would be a sort of football documentary." End quote. In that sense, it is hard not to draw parallels between Como and Wrexham. Wrexham have climbed from the National League to the Championship under their Hollywood ownership duo, powered and in large part financed by the success of a documentary series titled Welcome to Wrexham. Como have so far gone one better than Wrexham, reaching the top flight of Italian football, though the barrier to entry in Serie A is significantly lower than it is in the Premier League. That's not to diminish Como's achievements or the job that the new owners have done. When they arrived, Como were in the midst of an ultimately successful promotion race from a semi-professional 4th tier. The team didn't have a training ground to call their own, they were simply renting an artificial pitch in Ponte Lambro, which was shared with other clubs to put on training sessions, booked a couple of weeks at a time. Now the club have their own purpose-built training ground in nearby Mazzate, which they are rapidly looking to upgrade and expand, seeking to emulate the academy success of Atalanta, only 30 miles away in Bergamo, who have produced the likes of Amad Diallo, Dejan Kulusevski, and Alessandro Bastoni in recent years. Those three only made 10 Serie A appearances for Atalanta between them, but they were sold for more than 100 million euros of pure profit, as Atalanta gradually fought their way up to the top end of the Serie A table. Speaking to James Horncastle in The Athletic over a year ago, Alessandro Gabrieloni described the transformation at Como as being, quote, two different clubs. Gabrieloni has seen it all, having joined Como in 2018 before the takeover, when he says some players went unpaid. Now aged 30, Gabrieloni has played over 200 games and scored 65 goals for the club. His one goal this season made him only the fifth player in the entire history of Italian football to score a goal for the same club in all four divisions. In that same article, minority owners Cesc Fabregas and Thierry Henry both downplayed the idea that the deep pockets of Como's owners meant that the club was going to spend big. Fabregas laughed off the idea that Como would go after big-name signings, like his former Barcelona teammate and friend Lionel Messi, who has reportedly had a villa on Lake Como since 2014. Thierry Henry, meanwhile, stated, quote, "It's not like we're throwing money everywhere," keen to emphasise the importance of the club not spending beyond their means and building gradually, following recent boom and bust cycles resulting in bankruptcies in 2005 and 2017. There is some truth to that. Jarum recruited experienced football operators at Como, like Dennis Wise, who was brought in as a technical consultant following the takeover and promoted to CEO in 2021, and Oshan Roberts, who was appointed as head of football development 18 months ago, with incremental improvements targeted as opposed to radical rebuild season upon season, even after winning promotions. Roberts, once described as the most influential man in Welsh football, spent 8 years as the Welsh FA's technical director. During that time, Wales climbed from 75th in the FIFA World Rankings when he was appointed, below Togo, Uzbekistan and Oman, up to 10th by the time that he stepped down to accept a job as Chris Coleman's assistant in 2015, above Italy, France and Spain. Together, Coleman and Roberts took Wales to their first ever Euros in 2016, where they reached the semi-finals, recording a famous victory against Belgium's golden generation in the quarters. Roberts also served as Como's caretaker boss during the second half of last season, as Cesc Fabregas wasn't allowed to manage the team for more than a month, owing to the fact that he hadn't yet obtained the necessary coaching badges. Following promotion, Fabregas returned to the hot seat, and Roberts turned his attention to development full-time. Nonetheless, there were signs that Como had the richest owners in Italian football. Como native and Italian international Patrick Cutrone, who joined Wolves from AC Milan for £16 million in 2019, dropped down to join Como in Serie B in 2022, followed by fellow former Italian international Simone Verde, who joined Napoli and Torino in 2018 and 2019 for a combined €45 million in the summer of 2023, who made the same unexpected drop down into Serie B. Como's wage bill, meanwhile, rose from €19.7 million in the 2022-23 season, which is already highly competitive by Serie B standards, to more than €30 million in 2023-24, putting it only very narrowly behind the lowest spending Serie A clubs. It was following promotion to Serie A, however, that Como's co-owners and managers' promises of sustainable growth and modest spending began to look rather suspicious. Como signed a quite incredible 30 players last season across the summer and winter transfer windows, including loanees, spending just shy of €100 million and bringing in players from Manchester United, Real Madrid and Barcelona. There were big names too. Cesc Fabregas' former Spain teammate and fellow Euros and World Cup winner Pepe Reina was talked into signing on a free transfer from Villarreal, despite being 4 years older than Fabregas himself. Another Euros winner and Torino legend Andrea Bellotti was signed for €5 million from Roma. Fabregas' ex-Barcelona teammate Sergio Roberto took some convincing but was ultimately tempted to make the move to Como, following 14 years and almost 400 appearances in the Barca first team, and another World Cup and Champions League winner, Rafael Varane, was successfully persuaded to join the newly promoted Serie A side after his contract expired at Old Trafford. Age 31, Varane looked to be a real coup, but he suffered a serious knee injury just 23 minutes into his Como debut and decided to retire from the sport. A serial investor, meaning that he has invested in a lot of companies not specifically in breakfast-related products, Varane has since joined the Como board, which is beginning to resemble one of those five-a-side dream teams, where President Mirwan Suwarso has joked that he is, quote, smarter than me. The signings who have made the biggest impression for Como have been less well-known names, like former German youth international Marc-Oliver Kempf, brought in from Hertha Berlin, who has been a rocket centre-back, Senegalese teenager Assane Diao, who was an absolute revelation following his mid-season arrival from Real Betis, scoring 8 goals in only 15 games, and, most notably of all, 20-year-old Nico Pats, who was brought in for €6 million from Real Madrid and made the Serie A Team of the Year in his debut campaign at Como, as well as being named as the best young player in the league. Mirwan Suwarso has claimed that Pats isn't for sale, but that hasn't stopped Bayer Leverkusen from approaching them, prompting Real Madrid to consider activating a reported €8 million buyback clause in his contract. Como had the second highest net spend in Serie A as a newly promoted club, above Juventus, AC Milan and Napoli, and only very narrowly trailing Roma. It would be a surprise, when the club's accounts are published for this season, if their wage bill hadn't doubled, taking it above the likes of Udinese and Hellas Verona's, if not even Bologna's. The job that Cesc Fabregas has done has been impressive, hence the reported interest from Bayer Leverkusen and Inter Milan, as well as those around him. But this is far from a fairy tale rise from the 4th to the 1st tier, brought about by pluck and determination alone. Monza enjoyed a very similar rise, from Serie D to Serie A in 5 years, after the Berlusconi family bought the club, bringing in several big names and managing to finish 11th in their first season following promotion, despite spending less than Como. Although, admittedly, Monza were relegated in last place, following an abysmal showing this season. We haven't yet touched upon the people actually writing these big checks at Como, namely Budi and Bambang Hartono. The sons of Oiwi Guan, a Chinese-born businessman who moved to Indonesia in 1920 and started a fireworks company during the 1930s, the brothers inherited their father's business empire when he died in 1963. Shortly before the outbreak of World War II, Oiwi Guan's firework factory exploded, killing and maiming some of its workers. The factory was rebuilt, but the company shut down not long after Indonesia declared its independence. Oiwi Guan's next venture was a company called NV Murup, which was on the verge of collapse when he took it over in 1951. NV Murup's best-selling product was Jarum Gramophone, literally gramophone needle when translated into English, which was a brand of spice cigarettes. Over the next decade, Oiwi Guan streamlined the business, focusing on spice cigarettes, and shortening the brand's name to Jarum. During the same year that Oiwi Guan died, his factory burnt down again. I can't help but thinking that he ought to have taken greater precautions following the whole fireworks episode, meaning that the business that Budi and Bambang inherited had to be quite literally rebuilt. Whereas I seem to talk a lot about Nepo baby football club owners on this channel who did very little to amass their fortunes, it would be fair to say that Budi and Bambang transformed Jarum, building the largest tobacco empire in Indonesia. Spice cigarettes are incredibly prevalent in Indonesia, where 37.6% of the population over the age of 15 smoke, including almost 2/3 of all men. In per capita terms, Indonesia has the 9th most smokers or tobacco users of any country in the world, and of the countries above them, only Myanmar has a larger population than Indonesia's capital Jakarta. Tobacco kills almost 300,000 people annually in Indonesia. Up to a quarter of all male deaths cite tobacco as a leading cause, along with roughly 7% of female deaths. Year to year, tobacco accounts for between 12 to 17% of all deaths in Indonesia. That is between 1 in 8 and 1 in 5 people every year. And of course, unlike other leading causes of death, such as strokes and heart failure, tobacco claims an especially high number of premature lives and preventable deaths. In the UK at least, It feels like smoking is something that was high on the agenda maybe 10 or 20 years ago, but is now rarely discussed due to a sense of it being old news. There is a feeling that smoking has been deterred by various pieces of legislation, the public are broadly quite well informed, and other crises like war or climate change have risen up the agenda instead. But smoking is still the leading cause of preventable death, both in the UK and worldwide, claiming an annual 7 to 8 million lives globally, and for every one person killed because of tobacco, a further 30 will suffer from life-altering diseases and illnesses. This isn't a public health announcement, even if it is starting to resemble one. We are still talking about the football club Como 1907, and I would imagine that most people watching this know that smoking isn't very good for you, not least those of you watching who smoke. I'm not trying to lecture anyone to stop smoking, I did that for long enough with my parents as a child, and I think that people should have the right to do things like smoking that are bad for them, but the fact remains that smoking is a mass killer, and the tobacco industry, though less often talked about than the gambling, arms or oil industries these days, remains incredibly deadly, predatory, and, if you believe in such a thing, evil. Como's extraordinary newfound wealth, therefore, is built on the backs of addicts and millions of dead Indonesians who were addicted to tobacco, but please don't let that stop you from enjoying the rest of the video. Even if you think that that is their own fault for smoking in the first place, Jarum, whose most popular products include vanilla, cherry and menthol flavoured cigarettes, were also implicated alongside several other Indonesian tobacco companies in an investigation into child labour conducted by Human Rights Watch. Human Rights Watch found that children as young as 8 years old were employed by Indonesian tobacco giants without hand protection, leading to them developing acute nicotine poisoning. Symptoms include dizziness, headaches, and vomiting. The investigation also found that the children working in the fields earned between 10,000 to 15,000 rupiah, equivalent to 73 cents to $1.10 for working 7 hours a day. The chairman of the Indonesian Tobacco Farmers Association, Sosenso, responded to the investigation by telling Reuters that the report risked generalising the whole of Indonesia and that some children worked in non-hazardous conditions. Not since someone at Mola Studios decided that there was an appetite for Dean Saunders' Soccer SOS has anyone so spectacularly misread the room. Djarum didn't respond to Reuters' request for a comment. Though fueled by addiction and the rapid rise of the company's tobacco division, Djarum has since diversified into food technology and banking. After the 1997 Asian financial crisis, Djarum led a consortium to take over Bank Central Asia, or BCA. Djarum still owns 54.94% of BCA, which is the largest private bank in Indonesia. Djarum also owns Bakmi, one of Indonesia's largest restaurant chains, Sarana Menara Nusantara, Indonesia's second largest telecom company, and Blibli, one of the country's biggest and fastest growing e-commerce platforms, among many others. It is unclear, publicly at least, whether either of the Hartono brothers have attended a Como game during their more than 6 years owning the club, but other members of the family certainly have. Pictured here is the rarely cited Giok Hartono, Robert Budi Hartono's wife, about whom very little is known, and that is Roberto Hartono, one of Michael Bambang Hartono's 2 sons, who is the COO of Polytron, another one of Djarum's companies, having previously spent more than 8 years working for Djarum in human resources. The family are reported to stay at the Mandarin Oriental in nearby Blevio when they visit, where even the cheapest rooms will set you back a few €1,000s a night. And that is why you need the children harvesting the tobacco to only be paid $1 a day and not have any gloves, otherwise you might only be able to stay in the cheapest room at the Mandarin Oriental when, let's be honest, any self-respecting billionaire heir wants a suite. It is precisely these types of luxury tourists, perhaps not quite as rich as the Hartono family, who are the 5th richest in all of Asia, that Como 1907 are attempting to appeal to. Here again, though, there is an internal contradiction and tension, at least between different departments within the club. Thierry Henry emphasised the importance of appealing to locals when he spoke to The Athletic in 2024, stating, quote, "Como is going to have to stay Como," and adding, "At times, football clubs are not football clubs anymore, they're companies," end quote. Henri was countering the perception of Como as being a destination exclusive to the rich, pointing out, quite rightly, that not all locals are as affluent as the city's millions of annual visitors, and that the club should primarily be catered to them. That is almost diametrically opposed to the vision of the club laid out by Como president Mirwan Suwarso, who, when speaking to Calcio e Finanza earlier this year, not only likened Como to Disney, the football division to a theme park, and stated that it was purely coincidental that Djarum had bought Como as opposed to any other club, he also said, quote, "If we do things the right way, 60% of our new audience will come from tourists who suddenly discover that there's a football club here. If they visit for the first time and we play a low block and in a boring way, they will never be interested in Como. Our goal as a company is to become the world's leading football tourism destination. If you want to be a premium football tourism destination, then the football itself needs to be fun and exciting." End quote. It is difficult to square Henri's comments that Como must principally serve the local community and supporters with Suwarso's that the club's main goal is to become the world's leading football tourism destination with a focus on, quote, premium football tourism, and see how those two visions aren't in conflict. Right now, as Como look to develop and expand their stadium in conjunction with the local municipality who own the ground, it feels as though the Curva Como, home to Como's Ultras, has almost become part of the tourist attraction. The Como Ultras, reminiscent of what we see at a lot of clubs, but on a more emphatic scale, are like some kind of exhibit in a museum for wealthy visitors to Lake Como to gawk at and record for their Instagram stories. When asked about his plans for the redevelopment of Como Stadium, Suwarso commented, quote, "Football must be secondary." He was referring to the fact that the club wants a multi-purpose stadium capable of staging events and generating revenue all year round, but it was a telling comment. The Hartono brothers are reportedly dispassionate about football. Their favourite sport is badminton, where they own a successful club in Indonesia. Meanwhile, Suwarso appears to have a laser-like focus on the club's business operations, commercial opportunities and growth potential, as well as posting about 15 times a day on Instagram. Honestly, I've never seen a person who posts this much on Instagram. I could have watched an entire episode of Dean Saunders' Soccer SOS in the time that it took me to scroll back to when Suwarso became involved with Como, and that would have only been a slightly worse use of my time. Suwarso, who describes football as being only one of 8 divisions at Como, a football club, it is worth remembering, saw his vision put further into action last week with the launch of Cent Tourism, the latest addition to the Cent Entertainment Group, which already includes Mola Studios, Mola Records, Mola Chill Drinks, whose website is still under construction but who appear to be a CBD drinks brand, Como TV and Como Football. Cent Tourism will sell luxury package holidays, which include accommodation, travel, tours, and VIP and hospitality packages for Como matches. Suwarso stated, quote, "Our goal is to position Como 1907 as the heartbeat of luxury football travel. We're not just hosting fans, we're inviting the world to live football through the lens of Como, stylish, soulful, and uniquely Italian." End quote. Except, you're not uniquely Italian if 60% of the crowd are rich tourists, are you? You know, sort of by definition. You are, if anything, at least within the context of Italian football, uniquely un-Italian. Maybe that would make for a better marketing slogan. Prices for Como's hospitality packages this season already started at €150, and VIP packages at €490. It seems likely that will increase through the creation of Cent Tourism next season. Como have also launched 2 sets of summer camps tailored to 15 to 18 and 11 to 13-year-olds. The 15 to 18-year-old elite camp is priced at €8,500 for 2 weeks. That doesn't include any travel expenses, of course. And the 11 to 13-year-old Discovery Camp is priced at €2,500 for a week. The players' accommodation is the Hotel Gardenia Fiera, a 3-star hotel 25 minutes south of Como, where rooms cost less than €100 a night. The Como camps appear to be targeted primarily at Americans, with the coaching and training sessions being conducted in English. Probably in a uniquely Italian way, though. The coach might be speaking English, but he's still gesturing so wildly with his hands that you just know that you're getting an authentic, uniquely Italian experience. Como have also launched the pre-season Como Cup, an annual 5-day tournament this year contested by the hosts Celtic, Ajax and Asian champions Al Ahly, and before you ask, yes, of course, travel packages will be available soon, including 5-star luxury hotels and curated experiences with the Platinum package, comfortable 4-star hotels in prime locations with the Gold package, and value-driven 4-star options in Como, focused on easy access and affordability for the absolute peasants, scum, and real dregs of the earth who purchase a fans and supporters package. Another one of Suwarso's 8 divisions is merchandising, and, again, Como have bold ambitions. The club have appointed fashion designer Luigi Villaseñor as their chief brand officer, launching a collaborative project at Como's famous Villa d'Este residence. Born in the Philippines but raised in California, Villaseñor founded the Los Angeles fashion brand Rude, which takes classic streetwear themes and reinvents them, using high-quality materials and composition, and, a bucket hat costs £363. Como wore a kit designed in collaboration with their chief brand officer's company Rude in their final game of the season, which has sold out on the Como Club shop, despite being priced at a fairly hefty €275. Fortunately for Como, and unlike at a lot of other clubs, Suwarso knows not to intervene with the sporting side of the club's operations, where the club have appointed seasoned and capable operators who probably don't view the club as being like a theme park. Although, after Como signed former Tottenham star Dele Alli on an 18-month deal in January, Suwarso did comment that Villaseñor was, quote, also talking with our latest signing Dele Alli, who is a huge fashion enthusiast. They're working on something together as well. End quote. Ali has so far made one appearance for Como, against AC Milan, in which he came on as a substitute in the 81st minute and was sent off 10 minutes later for a tackle on fellow Englishman Ruben Loftus-Cheek. Como have lost over €80 million over the last 4 years, and, most likely, greater losses still this season in light of their spending and recruitment. Nonetheless, they have enjoyed a rapid rise, and European qualification in the next few years now seems like a viable ambition. Suwarso, unsurprisingly, doesn't talk in terms of football ambitions but business ones, stating, quote, "We don't set specific sporting targets. We try not to think that way. We view everything in terms of profitability. If we manage the budget correctly and keep it within a sustainable level, we believe we can be profitable within 2 to 3 years." End quote. His stated ambition, between all 8 divisions, one of which presumably is a CBD drink, is to turn Como into a €1 billion valuation football club, of which there are only currently 3 in Italy and 17 in the world. My ambition is just to never have to hear about Dean Saunders Soccer SOS ever again. This video is very long, and I apologise for that, both to you, the viewer, and also to my girlfriend, for spoiling what ought to have been a perfectly nice evening eating Chinese food, because I got lost down a rabbit hole of subsidiaries of Indonesia's largest conglomerate. Again. But there are loads of videos and articles about Como since 2019, where the presenter or author basically spends 10 minutes going, "Wow, they're so rich. Look how much money they've got. They can probably buy loads of players now." Cesc Fabregas is the manager, by the way. He used to play for Chelsea. Basically, what I did in the intro to reel you in, before bombarding you with statistics about preventable deaths caused by tobacco. But I don't find that very interesting, and I am hopeful that I've created an audience who also wouldn't. If those people haven't been weeded out by the 10-minute intros and 20-minute tangents at this stage, I'm really not sure what more I can do. This is, undoubtedly in my view, and I am extremely modest, the most comprehensive account of Como's ownership, their strategy, and the club's internal contradictions, at least in the English language. And if you appreciate stuff like that, why not consider becoming a channel member, either via the Alfie Potsama YouTube channel or via buymeacoffee.com/Alfie Potsama. And if you don't, then I can recommend a Mola TV subscription and a great little series called Dean Saunders Soccer SOS. Right, that's it. I'm done. It's about 25 degrees here, and for those of you not in England, that is very hot in England, I can assure you. Thank you for watching. Hit the like button if you enjoyed today's video. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. And of course, make sure that you are subscribed, both to the HITC Sevens and to the Alfie Potsama YouTube channels, both of which should be about to appear on your screens now, along with a couple of videos that you might enjoy watching after this one. You can also find me on various social media platforms, usually via the username @HITC Sevens. And also, you can become a channel member, as I said, via buymeacoffee.com or via my second channel, Alfie Potsama. Thank you for watching, and more important than any of that nonsense, I hope that you all have a fantastic day, week, month, and year. I'll see you all next time. Cheers.